Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sell More Books Show, episode 548. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Brian Cohen from Best Page Forward, joined by Vlad Bustiuc from Nova Media Marketing. Vlad, it was great having you last week. Happy to have you back. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again. It's been a crazy week, so good to see you here again.
Yeah, absolutely. The magic of podcasting. But yeah, I mean, one of the things we talked about a little bit in the last session that we'll get back into this week is just there are some books that were written to market that are ready to have a lot of ad spend on. You've talked about in your agency, Nova Media Marketing, the philosophy is we're gonna not necessarily break even or not necessarily make money on book one because we can make money in the read through, because we can make money down the line from all the visibility that we have gathered. But there are a lot of authors that don't know the numbers. They don't know if their book is primed to sell. I mean, what do authors kind of need to start understanding better to even know if getting someone to run ads for them, if using an agency like yours, if it even makes sense for them? What numbers do they need to get better at understanding?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and that's something that we've been learning also across the last 7 years. Whenever we look to take on a new client, there's two things that we're paying attention to, and those two things are the biggest factors for profitability. Like that would indicate us that this is an author that we could scale, and this is an author that we would, if we spend money, there's a very high likelihood of them being profitable. So the two things are, number one is a series length. And the reason this is important is based on a series length, we've determined that, let's just give you an example. So a 9-book series will generally bring back $5 for $1 that they advertise because it's so long. Right? So if you generate $100 in book one, then that would mean that the series will end up generating $500 once read through is complete. So that will give you, right? If you can spend 100 and make 500 back, that's great. You can even spend 250 to make 250 if you lose money. And then the second thing that we're looking at, and by the way, if the series is shorter, let's say that it's a 4-book series or a 5-book series, it will be very difficult to advertise because it's not going to be a lot of margin. There's not going to be a lot of room to lose money. If you lose money on book one, then that would mean it's probably going to eat half of your profits. Right. So if a book is long, then that's a good thing because you can rely on read-through to make up for, your marketing. In case marketing is not that great, you can still advertise. Even though you're not an expert, you will make the money back because you have such a long series that it will make money regardless. And then the second one is series read-through. And the most important metric there is from book one to book two. And we talked about this in the last week. Basically, you want to see like 60% would be like a really good number if you could see that from book one to book two. Because from second book, 80 to 90% of the readers will read the rest. So the most critical point is from book one to book two. And last week I gave the example, if a book is making $10,000, book one generated $10,000, then book two is going to be worth $6,000. Now, if the read-through is down to 30%, then that means that book three is going to be worth $3,000. And then the rest of the books are going to be worth 80 to 90% of that 3,000 or 80 to 90% of that 6,000. And that's going to make a huge difference. Right? So you want long series, like those are the best clients that we have. They have long series and then they have high read through between the books. Some have even 80%, 90%. Those are some of the best clients that we have. So those would be the two things. Like if you have those two things and you're not advertising, you could just start advertising as soon as possible. Like, you will see profit coming in. You just need to be a bit patient so you see the read-through coming in. But eventually you'll make the money. So advertising shouldn't be an issue for those people. If you have short series, 3 books, 4 books, and if the read-through is also low, then that's an issue.
That makes total sense, and I think that a lot of authors, they aren't using software like Author Helper Suite. They aren't looking at those numbers consistently. I've seen your screenshots, so I know you use Author Helper Suite with your clients, and we're big fans of it too. And so these are numbers to get acquainted with. These are numbers to understand more deeply, especially as you write series, because if you don't know these numbers and you aren't writing books or series that are getting these kind of metrics, it is going to be very difficult to scale up.
For sure. And an easy way to see this is just also by looking at reviews, right? So you can see, like, if book 1 has 500 reviews and then book 2 on Amazon has 250, you can easily estimate there's like a 50% read-through between the books. Like, we've kind of correlated the numbers with the revenue, with the reviews, and they kind of very similar point. So that's like
a
an
really
easier
good trick.
way. Yeah,
good trick. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Awesome. All right, well, we didn't do this last week because we're recording a few episodes this week for multiple weeks, but in a previous week we asked the question, what's the thing that you wish you could do in a book that you've been afraid to try, and what's the worst that can happen from doing it soon? Raylan Rose said, experimental genres like monster romance or even bully romance. I love to read them, but always feel like I'll screw it all up. Bully romance is very popular right now, and I do know some successful monster romance out there, Raylan. Han Bennett said, I'd love to give horror a try. A far stretch from my women's fiction. I'm a huge horror fan. Met my partner in a horror movie group. What's the worst that can happen? This 5th book gets put on hold. That makes total sense. And then Deb Hockenberry said, I'd like to try my hand at a cozy romance. I mean, there's often romantic elements in cozy. I don't know how much cozy romance specifically there is. I would say that's more like sweet contemporary. But look, what is the worst that can happen? Several people here, Vlad, mention not necessarily the horror, but mentioning bully romance, mentioning sweet contemporary kind of things. Some of these are very popular genres, and we get afraid to write in what would be an experiment for us. But most authors I know who don't succeed with their first series, they have a lot more success on the second series if they're willing to branch out.
Right.
You need to try some stuff. So let's go into the top story of the week as I try to get over my throat here. So it is Say No to FOMO. Quote, you can't do it all, nor should you, says Amy Winters-Voss for Writers in the Storm. Authors have to do it all these days, with constant pressure to post to social media, write faster, learn every step of publishing, create ads, and stay connected with audiences via newsletters and more. And even though you're doing a lot, there is even more you're not doing. Quote, thinking we have to do it all is a sure sign of FOMO, aka the fear of missing out. Unfortunately, FOMO doesn't just lead to missing out. The attempts to not miss out can lead to anxiety, overworking, and even burnout, says the author. Quote, even before I finished writing my first book, people suggested I should do an audiobook and at least 3 books in the series. Then I read Chris Fox's 5,000 words per hour and wondered why I wasn't pushing harder, end quote. Things changed when she read Becca Syme's Dear Writer book. Syme, an author and Clifton Strengths coach, suggests authors question the premise before adding more tasks to the list, and to ask yourself, but do I really need to? It's important to consider what success means to you and how well that task fits in with your measure of success. If you feel the fear of missing out, remember that burnout will lead to missing out on even more. Before you let FOMO win, define what success means to you. Examine what is working and what is not, and when in doubt, question the premise. Vlad, you've connected with a lot of authors over the last 7 years. Have you seen this kind of thing holding authors back who do have the chance to scale up?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a very popular thing that's holding authors back. And we even see it, ourselves in what we do. We see it ourselves from the authors that we work with. And I think it's super important that you stick to what already works and you don't get distracted by, whatever is new, whatever people are talking about. Because we right, like there's so many ways we could advertise a book, or we can try to advertise a book. You can do BookBub ads, you can do, YouTube ads, you can do Google ads, you can do all those things.
Yeah.
But we found that we're just better off, like if we have something that works, just doubling down on that, because in the long term, instead of trying to crack multiple platforms, we would get a much better return on just mastering one or two max.
Right.
So I think that's, it's very easy. Like we all kind of like this idea of trying the new thing, trying, whatever everyone's doing. But, is it worth it? Because you're just giving up on something that already works for you for learning something new or cracking something, which takes a lot of time and effort and energy.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like the most successful authors I know, they do one thing, which is write. And like that, those are the most important, like the most important thing for authors is to write good books. If they do that, then marketing will become easier. And then anyone could market their books, or even themselves with very little effort, they can market that. And we're even talking about read-through. Like if someone does a good job at writing a long series with high read-through, that's it. Like that's what they have to do. They don't have to figure out BookBub ads or Amazon ads or anything else. Like someone could come in, market that book, even higher, like Amazon ads. Like they sometimes reach out to you and they try to run your ads. It would work. If you have a good product, 9 out of 10 times it would work. So yeah, I think the most important things author can do is just focus on writing books, and then either bring in someone in, they can do the marketing and solve the problems. Someone else solve those problems rather than them having to solve, a lot of the problems that happen in the author world. If you're an author, like it's crazy to think how many things an author has to do. Write, market. Like I can only market. I can't write books. My brain is not wired that way. So I can even like imagine someone that's creative to having to switch to marketing, way of thinking, and then having to go back to writing. Like I'm pretty sure that's pretty tough. And I think that takes away from them writing, which if they were to just write, they would be, to the 9-book series that then could be easily advertised.
I love that you brought up the difference between learning a new thing, and cracking it. The actually being good enough at it for it to pay off. And that's the big difference, right? It takes a while to learn something, but it takes even longer to actually get good enough for it to pay off. And that's the hard part. But if you can already be great at something like the writing, or if you need to crack anything, crack the writing, crack the writing to market, crack the writing a strong series.
Totally agree. Because if the writing is not cracked, then marketing wouldn't solve that problem, right?
Yeah,
it just can't.
Absolutely. Well said. So, hot potato a wisdom question here, Vlad. What should an author remind themselves so that they don't go off and do something they see another author having success with at the drop of a hat?
Yes, I mean, we've pretty much covered it in the first section.
True.
I have so we work with Neva Altai, which is a dark romance author.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a very interesting case. I mean, she came to us. She was making good money. She was making like 50 grand a month when she came to us. And then we managed to grow her business to 3 times it. So she's now making 150,000 a month.
Awesome.
Now, obviously, that's because she's writing dark romance, right? So if someone else is writing something that's not high demand, that's one of the reasons why that's doing so well.
Yeah.
But we had her on. We had a mastermind for authors, and we brought her on as a speaker. And there were people in the mastermind that were studying her books, right? They would go in and analyze, like, what's happening at chapter 5. Like, are they switching between this and this? They were asking her all sorts of questions of, like, what's your open rate at your emails? Like, how do you track that? And everyone was shocked by what she was doing, because she wasn't paying attention to any of the technique. Like, all she did was write the series. She wrote her first book in an email body on her phone.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like shocked when I heard this. And like, everyone is analyzing what she was doing in terms of writing her books. They were, like, she just basically read whatever was good on the market, and then she basically wrote her own series, and that's what she was doing. And then we came in, and all we did was just start the ads. Nothing like super complex in terms of ads, just basically making sure that we're driving the right traffic to her books. And because the books were good, they were selling.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything that she could have done differently that would put her in a better place.
Right.
I don't think, like, her going on, like, all she did, or basically what she told us is, like, the most important things for her is to get in touch with readers, right? Whenever someone would write her, she would actually get back. She emails like once every 3 months, something like very low activity on her emails, which is surprising. So she basically posts like once or twice on TikTok per month. Then she sends out a few emails, not a lot of them. But what she does the most is write books continuously, and then also engage with the reader. So those are the two things that are important, because what we know from Amazon is that they want authors to be consistent with their releases, because that's what readers want. So they want authors to behave that way. And then also the fact that they're engaging with the author, that gives the personality touch to the brand or to the author, and they feel connected with the author, which is then going to keep the readers and read all of the books, right? Which is what we want. We want the high, sell-through between the books, and that helps. Yeah. So anything other than that, like, it shouldn't be like a biggest, either like start marketing, if you can get a course or something, but don't try to go to create. Like, the most important things authors need to do is write books. Like, that's the most important one. And then make sure that they're written according to the market if they want to make money.
Yeah, except no substitute. There's no shortcut.
Yeah.
This is the way. Sure. This is the way it gets done. Thanks for that example too. I think you've got a question for me here, Vlad.
Right. So, so what's something that you spend a lot of time or energy that you later found out that wasn't right for you and your goals?
Well, we were talking about this a little off the air. I have played around with video and recording video content, and I've gotten expensive cameras, and I've gotten light kits, and I've played around with all of that. And while there are some author teachers, I think of Jason Hamilton and Kindlepreneur and Self-Publishing with Dale Roberts, who have built an audience on YouTube, I found that I'm just not someone who can consistently create content every day. I do it in bursts, which is not really what you need to do to succeed on YouTube. You need to be extremely consistent every single day. Content needs to go out, and that's not really something that I can do, and it's not really something that a lot of authors, and I'm trying to reach authors because authors are my readers, that authors respond to. And so I spent a lot of energy on it, a lot of time on it. Didn't work out, but I think one of the things that you have to realize is sometimes you're wrong, and once you realize it, don't have sunk cost bias about it. Just back out of it and move back on to what's already working.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think authors do this as well, right? Whenever they go into, going on TikTok or going on doing all sorts of new experiments, And I'm definitely guilty of what you just said as well. And I know authors that are guilty of, just trying new things for months that didn't, lead them into anywhere. But one thing that I've learned, we grew an account to 150,000 on TikTok, but it was just with the wrong audience. And it took us a year to do that. But then what we've done was, instead of like just committing to something to find out it doesn't work, we just surveyed readers and asked them, like, what platforms do you spend most of your time on? And they would, like, 0.01% would say TikTok. And then you would ask yourself, like, is it worth, doing that? So similar to what you did and I did, right? We could just ask, like, do you guys consume video content? Do you think that's a good idea, or do you prefer, right? And they would just say, like, no, just keep writing, please. That would be better. And that could have saved us money, time, right? But I think sometimes those ideas are more like subjective, right? Like, we like the idea of going and buying a light and some cameras and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but then we always, learn the same thing, which is, well, but we know this, like, even before starting, we kind of know it's not necessary, but we do it anyway.
It feels so much easier sometimes to think that we're buying a solution, that we're getting a button we can push, when really, as you mentioned earlier, as you mentioned in the previous week's episode, going 10 times deeper on something that is already working, I guess there's some kind of fear to it. I guess there's some kind of resistance to it. There's some kind of belief that, no, we already did this. But in most cases, it's there. That's where the biggest potential profit lies.
Yeah. And it's a tough decision to say no, right? To what we feel. It's tough to say, no, I'm not going to try this, even though I want to do it. It's just not wise, right? And then just sticking to that. Like, that's difficult. But I think that's where, just saying no to things, I think that's super valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I'm going to just do a lightning sound, and we're going to go straight into the lightning round. I know you were ready to do it a second time. I stole it from you. But
that's good.
In a recent post on LinkedIn, to change the subject a little bit, you talked about the importance of getting enough sleep, working out each day, going on daily walks. Why do you think these habits would be important for authors as well?
Right. So it kind of ties into what we said earlier, which is, we have to say no to things, or say yes to the right decisions, or take the right decisions. And in order to be successful in any realm, you need to be good at making the right decisions and then sticking to those decisions for enough time. And in order for us to make the right decisions, we need to be able to think critically and to have clarity. And in order to have clarity, you need your brain to work properly, right? You need your brain and your body to be on the same side as you. So if you're not in your peak during the day, you're very likely to make the wrong decisions, to be subjective, right? And just do whatever you feel rather than what needs to be done. And I think it's super important, especially for us and what we do, because we look at data. We need to be able to make good decisions. And I need to make sure that what I eat, my lifestyle, is aligned to what I'm trying to do. Right? Because if my brain is cluttered, I can't make decisions, or I don't even feel like looking at data and going in depth. So I'm sure you've experienced this as well, because I've noticed you're in great shape recently. So I'm sure that you can see that there's a difference in that, and you feel better, you make better decisions. And that's ultimately what, leads to success eventually.
It's so true. It's so true. Ever since I started focusing more on my health, I've definitely made better decisions. I've just felt better. And when you feel out of shape or out of your brain all the time, it's not going to help your author career.
Yeah.
So great points there, Vlad. You've got a question for me.
Yeah. So what are some of your non-negotiable habits for feeling good enough to do the hard work that you need to do?
So non-negotiables for me: exercise every day, eat good food. I have a meal delivery service that I've used for several years. And it's great. I don't have to think about, yep, I'm going to be eating three or more servings of veggies a day. I'm going to be eating good protein. I know that that's going to be happening. And then non-negotiable is getting to sleep on time. So if I can do those three things, I am going to be in much better shape to do the work that I need to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Vlad, we've talked about it. We've beaten around the bush a couple times on this. Authors don't like hearing it, but why is writing to market so important for authors to understand if they are in that quest for a full-time income?
So the books that sell the best, in my experience, and we, as I said in the previous podcast, like we sold over $12 million dollars worth of books, and we've seen that the series that brought in, like there's one series that brought in like $5 million from that 12.
Oh,
and what that has, like, if we look at it, like what's the difference between that series and other series? And we even went to the length of asking readers why they only bought that series and why they're not buying other series that author has as much as they're buying that one. And we've realized, like, there's specific things that, readers want from a series or a book. And if you give that to them, you're going to have a much easier time selling books. If you're going to go further away from what they want, then advertising going to become much more difficult. And yeah, it's going to be way harder for you to sell books. And yeah, like if you create something that's on market, then you will get access to all of the benefits of advertising, meaning you will have targeting options that would very likely work. If you write in a genre that's on demand, that's going to it's going to give you access to a way larger pool of readers that are hungry to, read books like yours. So you're just making, like, if you write to market, you're just making the selling part way easier than, writing about something that you prefer, because that's going to be, it's just like forcing a reader to try that out when they don't necessarily have an interest. And we've definitely seen that in each market, there's some correlation between the best-selling books. They all have similar tropes or similar premises that come across all of the bestseller books. And if you're good at spotting those, then obviously you're going to do a good job at selling the books.
Yep, that totally makes sense. I think you have a question for me.
Right. So let's see. Have
Second
you
to last
had
one.
Well, yeah. So okay. So right. So have you had a big advertising blunder, and what did you learn from it?
So it's interesting. The first thing I thought of was October 2020. I had been building up advertising for my 5-day author ad profit challenge, and we had spent something like $20,000 in the first quarter, or $20,000 in the second quarter, $30,000 in the third quarter. I said, all right, for this fourth quarter, we're going to spend $40,000. We're going to go all out. And sales were way down, in part because it was a presidential election month. But
Right.
several months later, we had a really good sales month again, because we still got all those email addresses. We still had those people on, and those people went on to buy things. It's essentially the nonfiction author funnel version of read through. And so I don't think that was actually the biggest advertising blunder. And part of this is because we're talking about it today. But I think the biggest advertising blunders I've ever had were not doubling down on things that had potential. I am currently in 2024 trying a strategy that's really similar to a strategy I did in 2019. And I'm looking back at 2019 and I'm thinking, well, why didn't I push that harder? Because now I'm doing it again, and I've learned a lot in the last 5 years, certainly. But why didn't I push it harder back then? And I think it was because I was nervous, because at the time I was only breaking even. And I think that some of the things over time that I've learned are just that You may need to break even. You may need to lose money sometimes in order to reveal, okay, well, how can I make this convert better? How can I make this lead to higher ticket things down the line? And that is something I've learned more in the last 5 years that have made me question, why did I stop doing that back in the day? And so I think that the biggest blunders I've really had have been around more about fear than necessarily about spending money in an unintelligent way.
Makes sense. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. Last question here for the lightning round. Let's say we have two authors. One turns off their ads now, and the other runs consistent ads for 6 months. Because I had people say, oh, well, can you pause these? Oh, we have to stop this. Oh, let's put the brakes on this. But we have one author consistently running ads, and let's assume they both authors convert decently well and have good read through. What kind of benefits may the second author who keeps their ads going experience?
So both of them, they're going to have some benefits, of course, in the first month. And then the first one that shuts off their ads, it will have a short-term benefit that they will, because they advertise in the first month, they're going to take in more profit in the second month. And the second one is not going to see so much profit in the second month because they didn't shut off their ads. They might even see like maybe a lower month. But what's happening in the long term is you're basically acquiring readers, because when you run ads, you're acquiring readers. Like, that's what you're doing. You're not running ads like just to make a profit. You're acquiring readers, and that's what allows you to make a profit.
Right.
So in 6 months, if he runs the ads himself, obviously he will get better at marketing. So that's one. And he will be able to do, better at marketing than the one that just run, ads for a month. He will have a better understanding. But the most important one is that he would have acquired way more readers than the first one. And then whenever they launch a new book, right, all those new readers will pre-order or buy the new launch that they're going to put out, which means that they're going to make more money when that launch is going to happen. So I don't think, because that's something that I've noticed. I've seen across all of our clients, they launch like once every 3 months or once every 4 months. Even though we advertise, and sometimes, they're not making as much profit, especially the month before the launch. When the new launch comes in, it all makes back from the previous month. It's all worth it all the time. And then everything gets bigger and bigger. So, launch book 5, it looks like this. Launch on book 6 looks even higher. And then launch number 7 looks way, way higher. So even though you're not seeing it because you don't have a new book out, you're still making money. It's just going to be there when you're going to launch the new books, because each reader that you acquire will bring you money, right? Not just for one book, but how many books you put out. So having a big list of buyers, of readers, I think that's super valuable, because let's say that you even stop advertising, right? You go 1 year advertising, you're going to acquire a lot of readers. And then when you decide to launch a new book, you will have those readers, that you can then sell the new books. So it's going to put you in a much, much better spot than an author that does not have so many readers. And as we said earlier, you're going to get, paid more to write a book.
That makes total sense. Thank you. Lots of great nuggets of wisdom these last 2 episodes. Really appreciate you, Vlad. We need a question of the week here. One more that we can ask our audience. I'm intrigued by some of the, the lifestyle habits as well, which obviously you stick to, I stick to. Whether it's related to the ads or that, do you have any questions that you would like to ask our audience today?
Kind of decided between 2. So one would be like, do they work out consistently? I think that would be a great question. Yeah, because I'm assuming like writing takes a lot of time, and it can be difficult to find time to work out. And if they do work out, I would be curious, like, what are they doing, right? Like, is it walking on a treadmill? Is it taking walks? Going to the gym,
I
walking the
love that
dog?
question. I
Yeah.
love that question so much. Let's do it. So, do you consistently work out? If you do, what exercise do you do? So, good stuff, Vlad. And folks, you can answer the question of the week over at the Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group. Vlad, it's been so great having you here. Your website is novamediamarketing.net. Folks can go check that out if you are interested in scaling through Facebook, Amazon, and other types of ads in the philosophy that has been talked about these last couple of episodes. Vlad, do you want to leave our listeners with any last thoughts here today as you ride off into the Transylvanian moon set? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know you have a pretty big following, so I would definitely be curious to learn more about, the question that we've asked, and would be interested to see, if they're advertising and how they're working out. I think that's a great, and you're being a good example, by the way, for authors,
Thank you.
with your transformation. So congrats on that. But
Thank
yeah,
you,
I mean, I would say, because I'm paying a lot of attention trying to simplify things and only do the things that are essential for success with authors and in marketing. So my message would be, if you're an author, like, the highest leverage thing that you could do is try to understand what readers want from you and then get good at giving them exactly that. Because the other stuff, someone else can solve it for you, right? If it's marketing, either you can do it if that's what you want. But if you have a good product, then it's going to be easier for you, or you can just give it to someone else to solve it. Yeah, I think that's the most valuable thing that an author can do. It's not figuring out the algorithm of TikTok. It's not, being up to date with what meta changes that they've implemented. Don't waste your time with that. Just figure out, what the readers want and how to give them that. Like, that's the most important thing. The rest can be solved by someone else or by you, but if you don't solve those two things, then the rest is going to be very, very difficult for anyone to do.
Well said, Vlad. Thank you. Appreciate that. Go check out Vlad, novamediamarketing.net. We'll have another wonderful co-host next week for the next episode. So for Vlad, I'm Bryan. Have a great week of book selling, everybody. And we'll be back for the next episode, number 549. Bye, everyone. All right. I think it's stopping.